Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So I've been scrolling through TikTok today, and I came across these clips that I would love to share with you of white folks coming out and telling on themselves. I'm not talking about little chats here and there. I mean straight up exposing themselves, the so-called codes that they use, talking about black folks that they think that black people don't know. Let me tell you something. As someone who's been around and knows how these types operate, you know, black folks have been ahead of the game, way ahead. That's why you notice these clips, they don't even have stitches. Why? Because black people aren't even entertaining such nonsense anymore. You know, like they're done talking. You know, they've raised their awareness. Now they're just watching, processing, and focusing on leveling themselves up. From the coded teams, some white folks still, you know, try and use on black folks, not knowing that black people know. You know, to racists who genuinely don't even realize that they are racist, to people out there claiming that white privilege doesn't exist. So yeah, we're going to talk about all that in these clips that I've collected for you, and at the end of this video I'm going to give my own 2 cents. So stay tuned and let's watch this together.
Since my last video did well about warning people of color about things that happen that they might not know about, here's a little thing. If you go to a restaurant and you are a person of color, and you hear the server walk back into the kitchen say, "The Canadians are here," they are not talking about Canadians. They're talking about you, and they're warning everybody that you're here because they're racist. They're making pre-assumptions about you based off of your skin color. So if you go to a restaurant and hear anybody, any part of the staff say, "Oh, is it the Canadians? The Canadians are here," they're talking about you and they're being racist. So please keep that in mind.
Although it may be shocking, a lot of racists genuinely believe they are good people. And here are the top 5 ways they try to convince themselves it's true. Number 1, when they're called out, instead of taking accountability for their actions, they simply blame the person who accused them. They didn't do anything wrong. In fact, the other people are being sensitive and they are a good person, so therefore they can't possibly say anything racist. Number 2, by leaning heavily into cognitive dissonance. You don't know, cognitive dissonance is when you have 2 conflicting beliefs and that creates discomfort in someone. So they have to either change one of their 2 beliefs so that they can coexist without the person feeling overwhelmed. So instead of being like, "Oh, I am racist, I should stop being racist," they're like, "Oh, actually, I am a good person and what I said wasn't racist," so that they can balance it out. Number 3, by leaning on their racist friends for validation. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. Number 4, by blaming woke culture as a whole for the reason that they have been called out because they couldn't possibly do anything wrong. It must be a societal problem. And number 5, by playing into the reverse racism myth. Not only am I not racist, but actually you are being racist to me as a white person because that is the real problem in society. Bye.
You want to know why some of the white community is over the black community? It's because they're racist. I saw a video the other day from Simple Black Theory, and I'm going to link his video to this one. He was debunking a video by the real Athena K. And I'm not going to link to her video. I'm tired of looking for it. She doesn't need any more of your traffic anyway because her opinions are trash. But she was saying that white people are tired of being blamed for something that they didn't do themselves. And that's true. That's true. When we look at our history and we look at slavery and Jim Crow and lynching, those aren't things that most people today have done. But, you know, black kids in the foster care system are still adopted with the goal of turning them into slaves. There are people who are still being arrested for slavery. The 13th Amendment still legalizes slavery as punishment for a crime. Let that sink in. Slavery is still legal in these states. It shouldn't be. We should have zero tolerance to this evil and arcane practice. But getting back to white people being tired of being blamed for something that they didn't do, nobody's blaming you for the sins of your ancestors. They just want you to acknowledge that it happened in all of its dirty, ugly details and then reject that inheritance outright. Because we talk about some of the most egregious things in our history books and kind of glaze over it. Slavery happened. That's usually where the conversation ends. It doesn't talk about how people were beaten near to death, withholding food, the living conditions that they were in, what their clothing was like. Doesn't talk about how their languages were stolen from them, how they were beaten for trying to speak their language, how their heads were shaved, which black hair is a big portion of their culture. It doesn't address the rapes, the philia, the breeding programs, none of that. We don't talk about how slaves were rented out. Oh, my ancestors didn't have slaves. Did they rent them? Did they rent them? People who rented slaves were worse to the slaves than the people who owned them. And I said we should reject that heritage outright. That includes any of the words and terminology that our ancestors used to talk about black people. So I don't understand why there's so many people who say that they're for equality, treating everybody equally. Why you are so hell-bent on being able to use racial slurs. If you say you're a good person, why the f*** do you want to say those things? It just brings us back to the original question.
You want to talk about white? I was born dirt poor. Roaches in our food, mattresses on the floor, eviction notices taped to the doors, kind of poor. My parents, their side hustle was beating me and my siblings bloody. I missed more meals than I can count. When we did eat, it was ramen, canned foods, or whatever we could steal from the gas station. There were 8 of us kids. Don't come at me like I grew up in some quiet backwoods town either. We weren't hearing deer rifles. We were hearing 9mm and Glocks on a nightly basis. Not because we were hunting, because we were dodging strapes in the inner city. I had a baby as a teenager, thought maybe I could break the cycle. Went to college, flunked out quick. Life was swinging before I even had a chance to plant my feet. Then the military came knocking. Promised me structure, a future, and a way out. What I got? Another flavor of hell. Straight out of basic, they shipped me to Afghanistan. 19 years old, couldn't buy a beer back home, but I could carry a rifle, kick indoors, and watch friends die in pieces. I came home to a wife who had cheated on me while I deployed, ended in divorce, missed my baby's first steps, first words, first everything. I got the title Dad, but only for 2 days every other week when the courts allowed me. So I drank. I numbed it out. I drowned it in alcohol and women. Hopped from job to job, security, government contracts, even worked with the feds for a minute. But it all fell apart. I ended up homeless, ashamed, alone, and broken. Now, I've been sober for 4 years, been through more therapy than most folks can stomach, read hundreds of books, and here's what I figured out. As bad as I have had it, if I was black, I probably wouldn't have survived it. That ain't an opinion, that's truth. Black Americans make up 13% of the population, but 38% of the prison population. 1 in 3 black boys born today, they're expected to end up behind bars. That ain't by accident. That is policy. That's centuries of systemic racism passed off as justice. The 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery, it rebranded it. It says slavery is legal as punishment for a crime. That's why we got corporations making billions off of prison labor while folks inside earn cents an hour if they're lucky. That clause was written to target black Americans, and it's still doing exactly that. Now I run an organization called West Virginia Fights Back. We feed people, we take care of people. No strings, no red tape, no begging for scraps. We take care of our own because the government won't. My dream? A Fights Back chapter in every damn state. Abolish the prison industrial complex. Burn the cage down. Build something real in its place. Fred Hampton said, you can jail a revolutionary, but you cannot jail the revolution. This is not about shame. This is about responsibility. If you've had the privilege of not being targeted by the system, you've got the duty to help tear it down.
No, white people do not experience racism in the US. A black person cannot be racist to a white person in the US. People who cry, white people experience racism all day long, always go to the definition of racism. They always want to say, well, the original definition of racism, the first definition of racism, the definition of racism has always been the same thing. It hasn't changed. It's one race discriminating against another race based on their race. And what is race exactly? When we look it up, it's a grouping of people based on similar characteristics that pertain to their ancestry. Okay, keywords: group, ancestry. it always had to do with history, society, social groups. Always. It was always a societal thing, racism. But these people want to ignore that. They want to ignore the whole societal aspect and just oversimplify it all the way down to the individual racism, which is just an example of the overarching racial discussion. There has to be some sort of societal precedent. There has to be some sort of racial context that we're talking about for racism to happen. If we have two people, one of them is blue and one of them's pink, and they're the only people who exist, period, the pink one cannot be racist to the blue one because race doesn't exist. There is no such thing as race. There are no social groups. There's no history. There's no context there. So if the pink one discriminates against the blue one because they're blue, that's not racist because race doesn't even exist. There's no context there. But if a white person discriminates against a black person because they're black, that is racist. There is a long history of racist context to take from. There is a huge difference in societal power, a huge difference in numbers, a huge difference in political power, a huge difference in like social influence. Okay? There's a huge difference in history. And there's also a huge difference in white people who are racist and black people who are prejudiced against white people because of how they've been treated by white people in this majority white society. Black people can have prejudice against white people. They can hate white people. They can discriminate against them in their business. They can do all sorts of things, okay? But it cannot be racist unless there is some sort of broader social context or some sort of like history that goes into it. It has to be based on that. But when a black person is quote unquote racist to a white person, it's not because that person's white. It's not because of their features, their ancestry. It's not because of any of that. It's a very like chronologically recent affair, like where black people are hating white people because of how they've been treated historically by white people. And then also in their lives today, like how a black person has been treated by white people. If they've been treated badly by white people who are racist, then, and that's a pattern, then they're probably going to have a pretty negative view of white people. That's not racism. That's prejudice, not racism. But racism's just one person discriminating against someone else because of their race. No, it's not. It goes beyond that. Because if you look at the definition of race, when we're talking about discriminating against someone because of their race, it has to be some sort of ancestral, historical context, okay? When we define race, keywords are group and ancestry. Black people as a whole are not racist to white people. There's no social dynamic between black people and white people where the black minority is somehow subjugating the white majority. But there is a dynamic where the white majority, vast majority, is subjugating the black minority. And that has always been the case as far as the US has existed. So black people who have prejudice against white people might hate white people because of how racist white people have been to them and because of racist trauma that they have towards white people or from white people that white people have inflicted on them. And that hurt and that pain might come out as hatred of white people and severe prejudice against white people and maybe even discrimination against white people. But it's not because of the white person's race specifically. It's not because of their like features and like, oh, they're inferior to us because we're black and black people are superior to white people. No, it's completely different. It's, I want to live in a world where white people stop viewing us as inferior as a black person. I want them to stop treating black people badly. I want them to stop being racist to black people. They want equality. And so they hate that white people continue this social construct of racism. They hate that. And they might hate white people because of how they've been treated over and over and over again by white people. That's not racism. That's anybody who's been mistreated by this particular group of people is going to feel negatively about that group of people. That's not racism. That's not viewing your race as superior to them. Okay? You're not discriminating against them for the same reasons that white people are discriminating against black people because of their racism. Completely different things. Black people can totally be prejudiced. A lot of them can be prejudiced against white people. They can hate white people. They can discriminate against white people. But the overarching context is that white people have always been racist to black people in the U.S. as far as the U.S. has existed, for as long as it's existed. And so that means when white people are racist and discriminatory against black people, it's because they are racist and they view white people as superior to black people. And we actually have neo-Nazi organizations, KKK organizations, white supremacist organizations who are there. That's their entire thing. Like that white people are the superior race and all the others should just, like, who knows what they really espouse. I don't even know what they espouse, but they're racist. And then black people don't have any groups like that. Like the closest thing that they have would be like, I don't know, the Black Panther Party from way back when, or like just like black organizations in general. But those aren't hate groups. Those aren't like, we're superior to you because we're black and you're inferior because you're white. There is none of that. It's a completely different dynamic going from black people to white people, like completely different dynamic. There is prejudice over here and there's racism over here. So again, I'm tired of people saying, oh, well, racism is just defined as one person discriminating against someone else because of their race. Again, let's look at the definition of race, keywords, group, and ancestry. Okay? There has to be some sort of social group thing going on. There has to be some sort of racial context, some sort of history, something. It can't just be like one person discriminating against someone else because they look weird to them, but there's no like racial context happening. It's just like, oh, you look weird. And it might not even have anything to do with race. Like it has to pertain specifically to race to be racist. And race in and of itself is a societal thing. Race is not an individual thing. It is a bigger umbrella that has individual instances of racism, which are examples, but those examples come from the overarching umbrella that is the racial context and history that white people and black people in the U.S. have. So black people can totally be prejudiced against white people and hate white people, but they cannot be racist to white people in the U.S. because of the context in which we live.
Okay, so let's talk about this. To start with, I'm going to say, honestly, I think black folks have moved beyond this whole phase of going back and forth trying to educate white people on what's obvious at this point. You know, black Americans have been doing that for years, explaining their racism, breaking down the microaggressions, calling out the dog whistles, decoding the so-called codes they use when they think black people don't know that they can understand. You know, they've done the work. They've had their conversations and they've told the truth thousands different ways. And truthfully, many of them are just talking, you know. I think I'm part of those. I've joined them, you know. I'm part of the black American, whether you like it or not. I'm coming to the cookout because I love you guys, okay? Yeah, so we've passed that stage, okay? These days, black folks are sitting back and watching. I mean, now I'm part of the we, okay? Okay, I'm not in America, okay? But I love you guys. You know, if you need me, just call me. Come to Africa. I'm gonna accommodate you. Gonna give you a piece of land. Yeah, Africa is beautiful. Yeah, like I was saying, we are focusing on healing, building, growing, and doing the inner and outer work to better themselves, their families, and their communities. You know, that doesn't mean like they don't care. You know, it means they've learned that talking to a brick wall isn't progress. You can't educate someone who's committed to misunderstanding you. You know, you can't reason with folks who don't even want to see the truth, because truth threatens the power they've grown comfortable having around. And that's really what it comes down to, isn't it? You know I'm right. So white folks, especially ones are still clinging to these outdated mindsets, they know the truth. Let's be real. This idea that they're just now learning or finally waking up to this, at least these are trying. I'm talking about those who are even thinking about it. Please, many of them knew all along, and they know this. They just don't want to do anything about it, because something would mean giving up that feeling of superiority, that sense of power. You know, it's not that they're confused, it's not that they don't know the truth, okay? Because equality feels like oppression to those who've spent generations at the top of the pyramid. They want to keep that edge, they want to stay in control. So instead of doing the work, they act clueless. Instead of owning up, they deflect, they rewrite history, shift the blame, and pretend like it's all in our heads, you know. But the internet doesn't lie. These clips don't lie. The proof is in plain sight now, in their own, from their own mouths. The veil is off. Now, to those white folks who are waking up, the ones who are finally seeing the truth for what it is and choosing to speak up instead of staying silent, good for them. Seriously, that takes courage. It's not easy to go against your own comfort, to unlearn what you've been taught, and to challenge a system that benefits you at the expense of others. So for the ones doing that work, calling out racism, checking out their privilege, and standing in solidarity, I respect that. We see that. But don't expect that we're going to applaud for doing that, you know, the bare minimum. Allyship isn't a performance, it's a lifestyle. It's not about being not SS, it's about being anti-SS, okay? It's about using your voice when it matters, not just when it's trending. And most importantly, it's doing the work when no one else is watching. And for the rest, they'll keep talking in codes, they'll keep, you know, pretending like they don't know these things, and the internet will keep catching it. But block folks, you know, we are not pressed. You know, we've evolved past the point of constantly having to, you know, we've grown tired of trying to fix a system that wasn't meant for us. I'm part of you guys, okay? So pardon me. Yeah, Black Americans are focusing on pouring into each other, building generational wealth, protecting their peace, telling their own stories, and creating spaces where they don't have to explain their humanity. They're choosing joy, they're choosing health, and they're choosing themselves, you know. And the truth is, no matter how hard folks try to cling to that old demand, the shift is already happening. The world is changing. The voices that were once silenced are now amplified. The things that were once hidden are now out in the open. And if you're not growing with the change, you're getting behind. So I'll say this. It's a new day, and Black folks are no longer begging to be understood. You know, they're no longer here to convince anybody of their worth. You know, they know who they are. They know that they've survived, okay? They know that they're capable, and that's power. So what's your take on this, guys? I really want to hear your thoughts on these clips I just played. Drop your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what stood out to you in these clips. Are you seeing the shift? Do you think Black people are done with the black and back and forth? Like I said, have you noticed more white folks finally waking up and holding themselves accountable? let's keep this conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe. And thank you for watching. I will definitely see you in my next video. My dog. Shut up, dog. I'll see you in my next video. Please stay peaceful.